What would you do if life blindsided you with a cancer diagnosis? Catherine tells her story today.
Welcome to the virtual studio. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, first of all, for those who don't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, my name's Catherine. You and I know each other through work previously. Apart from that, I'm a mother and a wife and daughter and sister, and I'm working as an agility coach at the moment.
Awesome. And if you were to write an autobiography, what would the title be and why?
I've been thinking about this. So one of the autobiographies I like is A Fortunate Life by A.B. Facey. So I thought something like Serendipity and Nasi Goreng, and that sort of captures the idea of variety. And, nasi goreng's a dish that everyone makes in different ways. And, it could be too spicy at times, or it could have an egg on top. And, so it's sort of about, the variety of life and, coping with different ingredients that you encounter along the way.
I love that, especially given I know you personally and I know that you have an Indonesian background.
Yeah. Well, I used to have a blog called The Empress Nasi Goreng, and just having Nasi Goreng the title gets you lots of followers as well. So I think it would sell better if it had that in the title.
I love it. You mentioned, you've had a lot of different ingredients in how you. So I'm curious, out of at the moment, what's been the most memorable challenge or setback to date for you?
Yeah. Well, probably in recent years, having a breast cancer diagnosis in 2022 was probably a big challenge. I'm fine now, but, it was sort of a big shock at the time and something that I had to sort of really, draw on my inner strength to deal with and try and find, ways of getting through it, and also, sort of drawing on the positives that have come out of that experience as well.
What was the most difficult part for you during that time?
Well, I think just loss of control, like I'm one that's fairly autonomous or, likes to direct my own show. But when something like that happens, you totally turn yourself over to the medical profession and the experience. I remember the day that I got told, I was kind of in shock, and I was like, but I've got a meeting this afternoon, and, and I've got to do this and that. I can't possibly take time off work. They were like, well, you don't actually voice. So sort of coming to, just sort of adjusting to that at first. And then the really hard part after that is like not knowing what's going on. So there's usually a bit of a time, and everyone that you speak to that's had cancer will say the same thing. Usually that, the hardest time is between getting the diagnosis and then getting a plan moving forward. So that can sort of take a long time. And then just, once you sort of get into the rhythm of it, it's not as well, it's not great, but it's sort of not as bad as in my case, it wasn't as bad as I had expected. So, yeah. So
What do you think you were expecting?
I think cancer treatment has come along so far in recent years that, if you hear the word cancer and you sort of think it's a death sentence pretty much. And like my own father passed away from cancer. So, yeah, so it's kind of, and then I've also experienced, my brother-in-law was living here going through his chemotherapy for throat cancers, and, that was just very gruesome. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think mine was as bad as that. It didn't go on as long, and fortunately, because it had been caught early and it was a contained kind, it was sort of able to be treated successfully, in a relatively short period of time.
Found earlier that it was a particularly difficult challenge or setback for you because, first of all, you were not really in control, and secondly, just a sense of not knowing what next could look like. And how do you think being not in control and not knowing what next look like has shaped your mindset and your perspective to life now?
Yeah, I think I've always been fairly optimistic and accepting. But I do think, this was kind of an extreme example of it. And it did, sort of allow me or encourage me to sort of focus on what's important, like your friends and your family, and your health, but also, yeah, just to sort of find ways to, maintain a little bit of control, like looking for what you can manage. So I think, I've talked about this previously, but, early on in the treatment, I was very much like, I'm just going to get through this and just, hand myself over and not take any responsibility. And then after a while, when I sort of realized that it was going to go on for longer, that was when I, sort of thought, well, I should really take my own advice that I give to people that I'm coaching and sort of step up and set goals and then look for ways of, getting support from people and accepting support from people, because that's always something that I've found a bit difficult. Yeah, so I think, that was a good learning for me as well, and it definitely helped going along.
To summarize that learning or the lesson that you've learned from this experience, how might you summarize it?
I think it'd be that, things will happen to you that are outside your control, but, depending on how well you are, um, it's always better for your own self, I think, if you can, maintain some degree of autonomy and be accepting of the help that's offered to.
What do you think would look like for someone who might be experiencing this at the moment? So if you could tell her one thing before this challenge hits somebody else, what would that be?
The one thing I would tell everybody, and not just women, but men, but to keep on top of your checks, because the most important thing in cancer treatment is early detection. That gives you the best chance of survival. So, for younger women to do, or even men, because men can get breast cancer as well, is to, sort of do self-checks and get to know your own normal, and go and see the doctor as soon as you notice anything that isn't normal. And then once you get to 40, to start having mammograms. Because I think a lot of women don't know that you can actually access that service from 40 onwards, even though, it's promoted to 50 plus, but younger women can access it as well.
Yeah, well, I actually didn't know about that either. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so I'm hearing that you're urging people to actually really baseline how they're going with their health, look for anything that is a bit abnormal, and just do regular checks.
And don't put it off, because, yeah, like, you might think, oh, I've got this urgent thing I've got to do for work or for somebody else, but, you're not really, it's really important to take these things seriously.
Yeah, awesome, Kath. Anything else you might want to share?
I think, just that, treatment has come along so much, and living in Australia, we've got, fantastic survival rates. So, we're very lucky living here. So, it can, many kinds of cancer are treatable, and, your chance of getting through it, and thriving afterwards are quite high. So, sort of just bear that in mind, which is hard, when you first hear about it and you don't know. And also, yeah, just one day at a time, I think, with treatment. It can be a pretty grueling road. Mine went on from like January to July. But yeah, and it's just like, if you sort of look at it and think, oh, I've got to get through 6 months or whatever it is, it can be quite daunting. But I think, just sort of approaching it a day at a time, finding out what kinds of support are available, drawing on your friends, being really clear about what you need and what you want, and people will step up for you, and, you find out how awesome people in your life can be.
Yeah, awesome, Kath. A final question for you. How has this experience shaped the future that Catherine is looking to strive towards?
Yeah, well, I think it's really sharpened my focus on what's important. And, like, I think I'm a lot better at setting boundaries, and, like, my energy, I've gone through periods where my energy is low and I have to make the most of it. So, I sort of think, well, how can I look after myself and add the most value, like in work, for example. So, yeah, sort of really, and also, how can I maintain my health? And so, I've sort of become a lot more focused on my health and fitness since then, which will stand me in good stead. I think I'm actually healthier than I was before I had the diagnosis now. And it's very motivating. Yeah. So, and I've also, made some really great friends out of it, and just sort of appreciate life and the people around me, the world around me.
Any tips or tricks tricks, or maybe even technique that you might recommend for people to consider when they are thinking about what to prioritize in their life or setting healthy boundaries?
Yeah, so I think, a good exercise that I did with a former colleague of ours was journaling for a few weeks and just sort of taking note of what I was doing in the course of a day, particularly at work, and then going back and reflecting on that and thinking, well, that brought me joy or that didn't, it was like contributed to my well-being, feelings of well-being, or it didn't. And then, what value was I delivering to others through that? And, sometimes the things that I love, things that other people really appreciate. And then there's things that I hate doing but other people love it. So not sort of trying to force yourself to be a cookie cutter version of other people who might have the same job title as you, but, really sort of focusing in on, this is what I'm in a position to deliver, and sort of trying to be a bit firmer about that when others sort of place expectations on you as well.
It sounds like what you're suggesting is actually just be intentional, actually writing things down. Be intentional to see the time that you've spent on particular things and whether that actually aligns with where you want to be, is what I'm hearing. Because what you don't want to be is be a cookie cutter of someone else. Is that
and you
right?
don't. Yeah, I think so. And also not sort of spreading yourself thin, spreading yourself too thin, and, like using your energy, treating your energy as a resource and using it wisely and in a way that nourishes you rather than drains you.
Awesome, Kath. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
What am I taking away from Catherine's story? Know your body. Do the checks. Don't wait. And seriously, your energy isn't infinite. Treat it like the precious limited resource it is. Because it is. And if this hits home, pass it on to someone who might need the reminder. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Subscribe for more real life chats with incredible women. Until next time.